I'm Patrick Sebile, and this is the Dartspin. Well, today I want to talk with you about the Dartspin. There's some reason why so many people are using this bait is because it has a wide range of uses. So that's one of the ways that that bait come packaged, you know, with a wide gap hook. Some of them come rigged with a small Jighead, and also we have the duo packs. That means two bodies, basically like this, injected colors, or the poles which are painted, so a better finish, better details. Now, about using the bait itself, there's so much more than simply having a wide gap hook or a teeny light Jighead. Those baits are actually really great, purely used on Jigheads and Bucktails. And that's the topic of this very video. So let me grab this guy. That's a 5.5 inch long. So again, we have those coming in two packs. I don't have one with me on the 5.5 at this moment. So I'm going to remove the hook. As you can notice, it's super easy. And basically, here's a Jighead that fits well. So you have to know what are you targeting, which type of fish, because some type of fish, for example, the walleye or the zander in Europe, allow you to have a smaller hook with a thinner wire. You're going to use a lighter line usually. And those fish really don't jump, don't shake the head much, but they are very finicky quite often, and that's why having a lighter line, a very thin wire, very sharp, and not so much of a wide gap fits better for their fishing. But if you target more largemouth bass or a snook, well, those guys are the opposite. They are the type of guys that goes to the top, they want to jump, they want to shake the head, so it's much better to have a bigger, a wider gap. So for example, that's why this Jighead here is pretty good. That fits very well. So I use the hole right there. I put the hook into the hole, and you push. So you can rig it and just, you know, have it put on your Jighead, and it's free to go. Now, very often, I love to use personally super glue, especially this very one. That's a gorilla that have a little brush, and thanks to that, I can put some of the super glue right here on the shank, and so of course then that means the lure will stay there like forever. I prefer personally to change my lure together with the Jighead instead of removing, so this way I have a range with, you know, the same bait with different weights to fit my different needs. This way the Dartspin works great by just cast and retrieve. It's also very good as a bait that you can jig. Can hit the bottom, have a little bump on the bottom, or you can have long pulls and let them dive. You can have a slow roll like you will do with many other swim baits. It rolls pretty well when you have a faster retrieve. So a lot of action. So you can rig like a 5.5 from pretty much 1/4 ounce all the way to, honestly speaking, heavy stuff like 3 ounce, 4 ounce. I use them on Bucktails. So Bucktails are pretty much kind of a Jighead, and that's more advanced because you have those Bucktails or different type of fibers that adds to create more flash, more vision, but also in the water those things have a very subtle motion that helps someday when the fish are quite finicky. So that's why this Dartspin 5.5, for example, will fit perfectly on that bottom bouncing 4 ounce, which have a 6.0 hook. If you're going to target striped bass, calicos, tarpon, snook, big reds, groupers, snappers, a lot of use. Now you can use a lighter one. Here's one, for example, that have those longer fibers. So one thing you don't want is to have the fiber that long that once you install your Dartspin, the blade and the swivel might end up to be together with the fiber, so they may tangle. So you see what I do here? Simply I cut to make sure that the tail is definitely outside of the fiber range, and I have all the benefits of the fibers themselves and the Dartspin, which is really one of the most efficient trailer you can dream of when you fish with Bucktails. I did extremely well on a wide range of species here. Now if you want to use a lighter Jighead, there's no problem to use lighter Jighead. Actually, with a lighter Jighead you can also keep the bait pretty much on the top if you have a pretty fast steady retrieve. Yes, one. Again, you have the hole that's already built in, so you have the hole here, you have the slot underneath, the cut on the back. So you don't want to hook the plastic, you just want to follow the hole and position properly the lure on the jighead. And if I do that here right now like that, typically when I prepare my bait, which I like to do before fishing most of the time, I would put again a drop of this Gorilla super glue thanks to the brush. You barely touch the hook shank. Just make it wet. Don't have a big drop of water of glue, sorry, because if you do that, the glue will go outside, may leak and stick to your table, to your fingers, and more importantly, you won't hold the bait better. So as long as you see that the hook shank or the bait guard is wet, that's it. You don't need to have any more. Actually, you may be very surprised, but look at this. This is a 3.5 inch long dart spin. So the dart spin length are the total between the body, of course the swivel here, and the blade. So it's 3.5, but the body alone, obviously you can see it's about 2 inch, kind of 2 inch a quarter maybe. So one may be very surprising to you when you see this combo that I have my swimming jighead. I just put my dart spin on the hook shank with a drop of super glue, and in that case you can see the excess. That's why I'm telling you don't put too much, there's no need. So I didn't even try to go all the way to that part of the shank. That was plenty enough. But what will probably surprise you, just a few weeks ago I was using that and I hooked a massive permit on that. I mean obviously I was in need to downsize my baits. Bigger lure were not getting beaten, and there was a boat next to me. That old lady with a small jig was catching small groupers, small snappers, and I was like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna go into some action. So I did that, and instead of hooking a pound or so fish, I hooked probably a 13, if not a 40-pound permit on that. So the dart spin have that wide range of uses. On the other end of the spectrum, here's the largest to date. That's the 7 inch. So the 7 inch, again, that's the whole thing. It's 7 inch from the very tip of the nose all the way to the end of the blade. It's a beautiful bait if you're looking for bigger fish. And for example, that's great to rig on a big jighead if you want to fish down deep, grouper, snappers, stuff like that. It's actually pretty good also for open water predators, like blue water predators, mahi-mahi, for example, kingfish, but also, and that's what I'm going to show you, also for tuna. So this 3.5 ounce swimming bucktail is just perfect. It has a 8.0 hook. That's the hook I designed. You can see it's very beefy. It's remade to catch and keep on big fish. And you just need to position, again, you look for the hole that's in there. You just glide all the way, and when you're here, that's where you open very nicely all those bucktails fibers. And this is when you want to put right here that drop of super glue, and you finish just to push and position your dart spin properly. You let it dry. So you can let it dry in two ways, because super glue, believe it or not, were not at all made for fishing lures. No, they were made for warfare. They were made for quick fixing of injuries on the battlefield. That's why super glue have been designed like 60 years ago, I think now, allowing for people who have an open wound to put some super glue and close the wound and having it drying right away. And that's where I'm going. The second way of letting it dry is actually not to wait until it's dry. Simply you drop this thing in water. And the reaction of super glue with water is that your super glue dry instantly with water. So that's what I do when I rig my jigheads and my bucktails, and I use super glue. I have typically a bowl with some water, and I just drop the lure, and instantly, bam, it's done. I do that a lot also when I work with lure prototypes. So, all right. So look at this. This is absolutely a beautiful bait. A 3.5 ounce swimming bucktail with an 8.0 hook and a 7 inch long dart spin. So if you're targeting bluefin tuna, big striped bass, cobia, harpoon, and many more, that's really a great way to go. So that's why when you think about the dart spin, think about using your dart spin on bucktails and jigheads. that's really very, very efficient and effective.